Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. It's been a little while since I made a hard post for this channel. I'm gonna let you know what's going on because it kind of all ties into this. I've been filming myself and I've been filming my teammates on Collage skateboards because we're releasing our video very soon here. I've also been editing the parts because I'm editing this myself. I'll put a little snippet of some of the intros that I've already edited in here, and just been dealing with all of that. So I've been a little bit busy. A lot of things in my life have had to take a back seat. I've had sciatica pop up, which sucked, but I've been having to skate through that because just some events and the way that everything kind of unfolded have led to me having to have the last part of the video, the last part we typically associate with the most hard-hitting part, and I was comfortable with where my video part was turning out before, but now, you know, I've been having to go in and just cement the part. So I've been having to do a little bit more jumping, I had some things that were impressive, I think. However, I needed to add an element of danger because, you know, that's what people tend to go to video parts to see. And that's kind of like what's fun for us anyway. You know, you spend all this time honing your skills and then you put yourself into a situation where you need to apply the skills you've developed on something dangerous. And that's what makes us keep coming back to skating, that and other things. But the reason that I'm making this video, well, let me plug something first. Let me plug Collage Skateboards. This is my brand. This is our fungus graphic deck, the matching hoodie that goes along with it. And you can get this at www.collagesskateboards.com. I'll have it linked below. We also have, and this is like, I guess, the preview for these. I love the use of this font here. This one's really cool. Also, the all-white background's cool. And then this is going to be my pro model. You can see my name on there. This is a really interesting graphic. I love green's my favorite color, and this is just a really nice deep green. So these graphics will be coming out with the video. However, there are other graphics for sale on the website, which I've shown some of here before. But yeah, it's just an easy way to support. Being a small business owner is not easy, as a lot of you will probably know, because a lot of you probably own small businesses yourselves. This is my second one, obviously the first being my skate lesson business. I guess you could call YouTube being a small business, but there's not too much involved in that compared to the other things that I do. And yeah, it's just, you know, I want to put out interesting stuff, put out interesting graphics, obviously with Ayako's artwork, and also to create some opportunities for the guys that we choose to sponsor, guys and girls. It's really rough. Skateboarding is expensive, and you need to move a lot. You need to subject yourself to some strenuous activities in some difficult situations. The boards are not cheap. The manufacturing price of the boards has gone up considerably since I started Collage in 2020. I mean, it's almost twice what it used to cost me to make boards now. So if that makes any sense to you, yeah, consider supporting. Also, there's the Patreon group, and we're going to talk about the Patreon group because that's where the topic of today's video comes from. So one of the patrons, Angelo Alviar. Angelo, thank you for your support, and thank you for asking great questions, and thank you for this question, which DM me, and I'm gonna send you a little something since I used your question in one of the public videos. So this comes from one of our Q&As. I posted the first set of answers to the Q&As for December last week, and I asked everyone to submit new questions. And Angelo submitted this one. He says, "Hi Norman, I've been practicing frontside 50-50s on flat bars, particularly on a square flat bar. Despite knowing how to get on the rail and lock in, I'm having trouble staying on it once I land. It feels like my board stops moving and I end up slipping out. I suspect one issue may be that I'm landing with too much force on the rail. My success rate for front 50/50s on ledges is about 95% when warmed up, so I'm somewhat confident in my ability to lock in and maintain balance on ledges. When I watched your tutorial in 2021 about this trick, I noticed that you tend to demonstrate the beginning phases of learning grinds and slides at a lower speed. I feel like I've been neglecting that in my practice. Could you provide some tips on how to approach this? Should I focus on adjusting my body placement, landing more sloppy, bending my knees, engaging my core muscles? That's a great question, Angelo. And this just, it's perfect because with everything I've had going on, I've been skating a lot of street. Now, I typically am on my skateboard every single day. Maybe one day out of the week I'm off my board. A lot of times I'll be skating at skate parks. I'm teaching my clients. I'm trying to learn something new or trying to learn a trick on a different kind of obstacle. And it's a very different type of skating compared to what I'm doing now. So for instance, yesterday I filmed a single trick in a line at the Rose Garden ledges near USC. And I did a bunch of tricks which I posted on Instagram and on the Collage Skateboards YouTube channel, which you should subscribe to if you haven't already. And these are tricks that I do or have done. The tricks that I did for the video part, they're tricks that I don't do as often because they're a little more difficult, but the tricks I did for Instagram, for instance, one of them was I did a frontside tail slide, kickflip out, going really fast to get into, and then ollie. It's a very long 7 stair with a very narrow entry point. And I almost didn't make the 7 stair. They're very long. The stairs are like 2 feet each. And way back in the day, I backside flipped, backheeled this set and tried to big flip it. Could only get the big flip around halfway because when you're trying to clear distance, you kind of have to change the way that you big flip, and I just couldn't get mine to rotate the whole way because these are long and low stairs, which are harder to skate than higher and shorter stairs. Higher and shorter stairs, you go slow, basically do your flat ground trick, catch it, try to stay bent and still and wait to land. The worst you can deal with is falling from the impact, but you wax the wheel wells of your board, you tighten your trucks up just a little bit so you don't wheel bite as much, and you're usually able to get away from it. Whereas the longer and lower sets of stairs, they're more difficult because you have to cover more distance and you don't have the height to help you along. But I was just thinking about how much faster I was going to do all of the tricks than I would in the skate park. Now, in the skate park, there are factors that make you skate slower. But the other thing is that ledges and obstacles in street spots, they're not perfect. The ledges I was skating yesterday, for instance, they have these big notches at certain point, and some of them they had to be bondoed, and obviously the bondo is not uniform, so your board is like clacking through bondo and stuff, so you have to go much faster just to get your trick through it. And like when I was first doing the front tails, I wasn't flipping out. There are sections of the ledge, and you typically start in the center, and I was sliding through 3 sections. The sections are probably like 6-7 feet long, probably longer than 6 feet because they're longer than I am tall, and I'm 6'1", so maybe closer to 7 feet long. And I was trying to tail slide through 3 of the sections because I could get 2 easily, and then I decided to flip out. And then when I landed on the first flip out, it only took me I think it only took me 3 tries to flip out of one. I was like, oh, I want to ollie the stairs after. And I realized that I'd slid too far to get the speed that I needed for the stairs easily, so I had to push a whole lot faster, right? And then I still barely made the ollie. I had to do a huge ollie, had to bone it out on the end and kind of turn sideways. This is a trick that you can employ when you're ollieing a long gap. You don't think you're going to make it. Obviously, you have to have a lot of experience. Paul Rutkowski III, who I sponsor with Collage and who's an amazing skater and an awesome guy. You should be following him on Instagram. You should watch his skating because he's awesome. I first found him because we were teammates on Destructo, and he had a Thrasher ad for Destructo doing this crazy tray flip. The team manager was telling me they had to hike like 2 hours, and Paul was almost dehydrated by the time they got up there, and he still tray flipped over this big crazy thing. Paul's amazing. He comes and sleeps on our couch to film, and he's always amazing to have. There's never a time when I would not let him come stay at my place to go skate. And so yeah, you should subscribe and watch him skate because he's awesome and he's a great guy. He's also a hunter, very interesting, a family man. I love Paul. I can't say enough good things about Paul. And with what I've dealt with, sponsoring people, sponsoring skaters, it's a breath of fresh air to have someone like Paul who's just consistent, always does what he's showing up to do, which is skate, and always leaves the atmosphere better when he leaves. I can't say enough good things about Paul, but I'm going to stop. Paul, who was filming it, noticed, oh, you had to bone that ollie out. You had to pick that ollie up and swerve kind of to make it land. He's like, it's always like you're gritting your teeth when you have to do that. This is a thing that experienced skaters will know when you've skated long gaps. It's something that you might have to do. But this is very different, and why I'm bringing this up, why this ties into Angelo's Patreon question is that I always demonstrate grinds on flat bars very slow because of the way that I learned to skate, right? The way that I learned to skate was not at a skate park. I skated street. I skated, like, the first spots that I skated were curb spots, and then on the weekends we would go and find stairs. First it would be 3 stairs, then it was 5 stairs, then it was like 6 and 7 stairs, and then it was the 8-stair black rail behind the Budweiser factory that P-Rod Nolly, I think he like Nolly crooked it back in the day. That's like the first rail that I did, like, I think like it's the first 8-stair rail that I did like crooked grind and feeble and Smith grind and stuff like that on. And then it was, let's go to the Silmar 9-stair on the weekend, and that's the first like rail that I lip slid that was a decent size, and blunt slid, and then eventually I nollie nosed it when I was like 17. I have the footage of that. If I can find it, I'll put it in there. And it was like, let's find the 11-stair at Westchester. So I learned to skate this way. And the difference in learning to skate that way is that when you start jumping down street spots, you're afraid and you go faster because you're afraid. It's much easier to throw yourself at something when you're going faster. And the consequence of this for me was, yeah, I would land these tricks, but I wasn't getting any type of comfort in my control over them. And even when it got to the point where I was like nollie nosing rails and like kickflip board sliding rails, and even like nollie board, nollie front nose, I didn't have a command over those basic tricks like 50-50s and stuff because I'd never really had a place to do them. By the time they built Pedlo Skate Park, which was behind my high school, I still went to high school there in the valley, but I lived in South Central, so I was catching 3 hours of buses each way. And so it's not like I was going to be able to go to that skate park and skate on the weekends, and after school it wasn't happening because I was getting my little sister from the middle school around the corner, and we were catching the bus 3 hours. So it just wasn't going to happen. And so I got sponsored and, you know, was doing all that stuff and had like ads in magazines and stuff before I had a command over those basic tricks. And I didn't really gain a command over those basic tricks until I started skating with Paul Flores and Jordan Maxim. And both Paul Flores and Jordan Maxim prescribed me what I think most skaters do. I'm not going to say all skaters do it because I can't obviously say that, but most of the skaters that I know, and I'm talking high level, amateur, professional, really good skaters, this is how they've learned to hold their tricks on rails, which is you roll up slow, you pop on, and you get comfortable just hopping on and holding very slow, holding as long as you can, and then hopping off. And when you get to the point where you can do that consistently, you speed it up a little bit, and then you speed it up a little bit more, and then you speed it up a little more from there. And maybe you learn a kickflip, maybe you learn to nollie in, maybe you learn to kickflip in, you learn the trick switch, you know, you learn something into it, something out of it. So that's something that I learned later, and that's why later in my career I was able to learn the tricks like heel flip to back 50-50 on a rail, kick flip to front 50-50 on the rail. Actually, that's not true. I would kick flip front 50-50 rails when I barely knew how to front 50 them, where I did it in a contest, I remember, when I was like 18, and like I tried to 50-50 it in practice and kind of slipped off, but in my contest run I kick flip front 50-50 because I realized like I have a good kick flip. As long as I'm confident in my kickflip, I get over the top of the rail, I only need to hold still, which goes back to Angelo's question about holding still and for like a second just to dink the rail and come off. And it was a low skate park rail, so it's not like I'm gonna have enough time to like primo over. And yeah, I was able to do it in my contest run, but I didn't have a concept of what I was doing. And so for Angelo's question, I would say the best thing for you to do is to slow it down and get comfortable hopping on and holding, and then slowly start to speed it up once you're comfortable holding. Now, I had someone in another video ask, what is flexing your bicep gonna do to help you balance when you're doing a grind or something? And it's like, dude, you are using your whole body in every trick that you do. Like, the reason that I'm able to do backside flips and nollie back heels and stuff like that consistently downstairs, it's nothing to do with what I do with my legs. Obviously, I have to do the proper thing with my legs, but what clinched it for me and what made me able to do these consistently was rotating my shoulders, and when I rotate my shoulders, and how rotating my shoulders is what starts me crouching down before I pop. Controlling a skateboard is about controlling all the parts of your body. When I hold a grind, when I hold a manual, one of the first things that I do once I get in is I will tense up my core, and then I will tense up my biceps, because I'm trying to remain as still as possible. And you'll notice this if you watch skaters who are better skaters. They might be moving their arms when they're holding something for a long time, but a lot of times you'll see after they've popped and they've crouched and things like that, they're very still, right? And the stillness is because you want to move only as much as is necessary. And so the more you master something like skating, the better you are at staying still. And, having everything take a back seat in my life as of late to finishing this video, I wasn't able to train martial arts. And this morning, I went to our 8 a.m. striking class for the first time in like a month. I hadn't trained in a month. And we went through 5 different drills, like faking a jab, feinting and then a body jab, and other versions of that, leading to an overhand, left high kick, and ending with a takedown. And the big thing that Anthony Cato, who is the main coach, co-owner, and the designer of the way everything is taught at Kata, where I train, is that he emphasized how slowly he wanted us to drill this thing. And that only at the end, when we did the burnout rounds, so this is after like an hour and 10 minutes or so of just drilling slowly and switching partners, rotating partners, so you get different looks, someone a little shorter, someone taller, do it on the pads with the coach, and don't finish the takedown. And by the end of the session, it started to feel like these were muscle memory, and I could move through them quickly without thinking, which is always what happens. But it's funny because ironically, a lot of skaters tend to take like opposition to this method of learning. And I've talked about it before when I said avoid magical thinking in skateboarding, and somebody thought I was referencing someone else's video who I'd never seen talking about magical thinking. When I say magical thinking, I mean acting like skateboarding is literally a magical thing where just because of the magic of you being on a skateboard for a long time, you're going to get better at it. That's not going to happen. Skateboarding is just like any other activity in that if you do it more and you learn to do things properly, right, by deliberately practicing the proper techniques, and the proper techniques for you, there are multiple ways to do a trick, just like there are multiple ways to throw a jab. You can turn it over, you can not turn it over. It can come from your hip, or you can have your hand up. Like we were kind of practicing the more Russian style, hand out and just kind of pawing at people today. But I've learned the jab in a couple of other methods as well. It's the same in skateboarding. Some people like Angie Peroni, who I sponsor, she puts her foot all the way up next to the nose for her kickflips, and it works for her. That doesn't necessarily work for me. The only time I'll do that is if I'm really tired and I'm playing a game of skate. But if I am kickflipping a set of stairs myself, my foot's a little bit past the middle. If I'm kickflipping onto a high back tail slide, my foot is closer to my back foot, way closer to my back foot, because I need space to create the force I need for that pop, and I need to really flick through the board. So there's different ways to do these things, but you have to practice those things deliberately in order to get better. And skateboarding, since I can replicate a tail slide, like yesterday I must have done 100 tail slides maybe, because that's what I did to warm up, and I was trying to hold them as long as possible. And I can't remember missing one of the tail slides I tried yesterday, except for the 2 kick flips out that I tried before landing the one. If I can replicate something, I can replicate something because I'm using a technique. And if I'm using a specific technique, then that means it can be taught. So the mentality that some people take that, oh, you just need to go do it, is nonsense. And that's kind of like what I'm always rallying against. Now the purpose of this video wasn't specifically to answer Angelo's question, as I partially answer it here because I answer these questions over on Patreon. And if you're interested in seeing a video where I answer this question and many more just like it, you can subscribe over there. But the point of it here was just so I could kind of talk about the parallels that I noticed between this question, what I'm experiencing since I went from, skating street maybe twice a month to skating street 2-3 times a week over the past month, which is actually a lot considering, I am 39 years old. I'll be 40 in like 4.5 months. My recovery is not the same as it used to be when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Not 21, I didn't skate at 21, but 17, 18, 19, 20, when I was skating stairs for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours every day, maybe longer sometimes, and I would barely be sore. That's just not a thing anymore, no matter what I do. So what I've noticed is I skate very differently in the street context versus how I would skate in a park, because in the park, I'm taking it easy. I'm not really too worried. I'm kind of drilling things at a slower pace the way we were today in class up until the last burnout rounds when it was kind of more like sparring and we were hitting each other. He wanted us to do certain things, obviously like our body shots full and things like that, and hit the guard full with your left kick. It's got to get that guard up. Keep that elbow tucked in. I made the mistake of not tucking my elbow in a couple times, and that definitely sucks. But yeah, it's like in the park, I'm drilling. So like in Angelo's question where he asks if he should slow down a little bit because he hasn't been doing that, definitely. That when I go to the park, I still have the nagging feeling in the back of my head that I'm going to lose my 50-50 on a flat bar. And so when the kids that I'm teaching go for a break, I'll go as slow as possible and jump on the flat bar and hold a 50-50. Try to hold it for sometimes 10 seconds, 15 seconds before I jump off. And I'll try to do as many of those as possible. And then I'll do the same front side. And then I'll do the same with feeble. And then I'll do the same with crooked grinds. Sometimes I'll do it with front Smith grinds. I can't do it with front feeble for the life of me. Longest I can hold the front feeble is a couple seconds. And it's rare that I make it to jump over. It's mainly to do with fear and the way that I positioned the front feeble in my head at the beginning of my career. Back when I was learning, a front feeble was considered like a crazy bonkers trick. It's funny now because people do them through kink rails and stuff like that, but through generations, skateboarding has evolved, and front feeble just being another trick is one of the ways that skateboarding has evolved. But yeah, I still do that to this day. I go, when I'm at the park and there's a little flat bar, I jump on, sit, slow, and then over the course of the session, I'll speed them up to the point where I'm just doing them regular speed, doing them in the middle of a line. And this is the best way to get familiar with your tricks because, when you speed through tricks, a lot of times you don't have time to consider your technique. And you do want them to be dialed in so that if you're intent on filming, like not everybody is, or if you're intent on just getting as good as you possibly can with the trick, just get in those slow reps, those deliberate reps, and it's going to make you do the trick better. It's definitely worked for me. It's how I was told to do flat bar tricks, at least by Paul Flores and Jordan Maxim, two people whose skating I respect. I think there's some other people who told me that too before, but I was just too scared to do it. By the time I was skating with those guys, I had the nuts to actually sack up and do it. But yeah, and it's gotten me better at skating flat bars. So that's a long-winded one just to kind of relate some parallels that I noticed between what I've been going through skating street and what this person in my Patreon group is going through, and my striking class today, which it's funny that as soon as I came home and opened up my email, I got that question on Patreon, and I was like, oh, this is funny because this parallels what we were working on this morning. More videos on the way. I got this extremely long video from my trip to Portland earlier this year. There's just so many clips, and I've had some of them laid down on the timeline. I've been working on it slowly. I want to get that out by the end of the year. But who knows, because I'm editing the collage video. So go to www.collagesskateboards.com and check that out. And check out the Patreon. They're both linked below in the description. If you want to support me, feel free to do so that way. I'd really appreciate it. Follow Paul Rutkowski on Instagram. He's an amazing skater. Follow Angie Peroni on Instagram. Subscribe to the Collage Skateboards YouTube channel. And I'm out.